Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guest is Maria Middleton, Senior Art Director at Candlewick Press. Illustrators have to have a recognizable style. False. Publishers are turned off by traditional media. False. As Maria and I discuss, not all guidance or advice should be followed. Among other topics, Maria and I talk about what the role of an art director is within the collaborative inner workings of a children's publishing house. She shares what she looks for in illustrators. And Maria points out why making work that makes you happy is advice illustrators should follow. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Like a new program that I'm just kind of still getting the hang of, but it seems like everything's working. So I'm just going to leave it alone and not touch my computer. I have like an anti-Midas touch when it comes to technology. Anytime I try to hook up something to Bluetooth, never works. The other day, my garbage disposal stopped working. Like, why did that happen? It's because I touched it, so I have this like weird, it's like my anti-superpower or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Just stay far away.
You've been an art director now for how long?
I've been in the industry for 20 years. An art director for 12, 13, something.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, because you started your career in marketing design, not book design.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Your first boss, your first art director in publishing was Eric White, and that was at HarperCollins.
Yes. Really fantastic art director.
What exactly did you do in marketing design? I mean, I know the answer to that, but for folks listening, what does a marketing designer for a children's publisher do, more or less?
Yeah, so we were responsible for taking art from the books, copy that was given to us by the marketing department, and making promo items. So anything from like a sell sheet that was going to go into Barnes & Noble, or the shelf talkers that would be advertising, the next summer read. So it was essentially repurposing pieces of already published books into a form that could be used so that the books could be marketed and sold and promoted in all of the various outlets.
Anytime I think of marketing design, I remember when I was at Simon & Schuster and at Penguin too, and you and I overlapped at Penguin for maybe a year and change.
Okay.
I felt bad for them because it was always artwork that they needed pretty immediately. I felt like they never really had time, so anytime they were working on something, it was something that was due basically now. And so they had to reach out to us, the book designers. We tried to stay on top of the game and get it to them as quickly as possible. We ended up having like a shared drive, and these I remember a server. There would be like a marketing server that we'd always have to put artwork into the folders for them to pull from and things. I mean, what was one of the biggest frustrations do you remember from that experience as a marketing designer?
It taught me a lot. So there were certainly frustrations, but I was so young and out of college and just happy to have a job. But one of the frustrations was just sort of the tedium of it, designing catalog copy for, 3 seasons continuously. There's not a whole lot of creativity there. But what it did teach me was how to make something out of nothing. And not that I didn't have nothing to work with, because we did, and Harper at the time, and I'm sure probably still now, had a pretty robust DAM asset management system. So without having to really go and bother the designers, I was able to access the resources that I needed. But it did present some challenges to make something that was interesting, and also I have a very high bar when it comes to making things that look good. And so, sometimes I wasn't always, totally pleased with how things would come out, but it was what it was.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you had to do? Banner ads, floor displays, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you name it. Anything that was marketing or promo for any of the books. I remember having to do a whole thing for Flat Stanley. I don't know if folks will remember Flat Stanley. It was like a big map, and it was everywhere Stanley had gone. And sometimes it could be really creative stuff. Like the marketing department was huge at Harper at that time. So yeah, it was a full immersion into what books were. But ultimately, I kind of got to the point where I realized, I think it was a Baskin-Robbins, and this is also dating me, a Baskin-Robbins ice cream coupon. And I just realized that I had spent hours making this coupon that was just going to go in the trash. And it was sort of deflating to think that, I wanted to be making things that felt a little more permanent. And that was initially how I decided to transition into book design, because that felt like it was a little more lasting.
Eric had a sign on his desk that said, "You are not making art." You said the sign was a reminder to not let the work become too precious. It was one of the last things I learned as a designer, was to not be that precious about every single thing. Mm-hmm. Early on in my career, I was so precious about everything that I was doing, and wanting everything to be, just so, and being a little bit pushbacky. It's an official term, with the editorial group and with other folks who wanted X and I wanted Y. And over the course of 10, 15, 20 years, you learn to be cool with the fact that as a book designer, all the design decisions, that's going to be 92% you and 8% everybody else.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was certainly something that the younger designers would come, the biggest reason a younger designer would come into my office all hot and bothered and, can you believe it? What they said, it was the preciousness part of it.
Yeah, there's so many things to speak to there. I'm really glad that you brought up Eric's sign, because, I think I've kind of lived my way into that meaning. I don't think I fully grasped it then.
Right.
But it still applies to the design work that we do now. I can't tell you how often I design a book jacket and then I have to redesign it for a paperback cover. So, again, I'm wanting to make something that feels lasting, and we all feel so invested, but that doesn't mean it's going to live forever in that form. And it also doesn't mean that, I got it right the first time. And I think there's a little bit there's humility that comes in doing this job for a long time, obviously it being part of a collaboration. But just knowing, I don't always have the answers. And sometimes what I think looks cool is not actually going to be the thing that a kid is going to want to pick up and think looks cool. Or, and not that I want to, give sales and marketing too much credit. I'm just kidding. Sometimes they have a vision for something that I'm like, I just don't think this is going to work. And then it works. And it's like, well, what do I know? So, cool.
Yeah. Another lesson I had to learn, and then accept that other people had good art ideas,
yes.
better art ideas than me.
Correct.
I'm still smarting on some book cover redesigns. In fact, I've looked back on a couple of projects that I did years ago, and I'm like, oh, how's that book doing? Is it still around? And I find it online, and it's completely redesigned. At some point over the last couple of years, they redesigned the cover. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all of that argument and sweat and tears and scratching my head and figuring it out and sketching it out on the subway and what am I going to do with this? And it's gone.
Yeah.
I had a bumper sticker on my desk. It was on my lamp, on one of those extendy, what do you call those lamps? The arm lamps?
The Pixar lamp.
Yeah, the Pixar lamp. Mm-hmm. I had one of those on my desk at Simon & Schuster, and I had a bumper sticker sized sticker on the lamp that was eye level with an editor. If that editor was leaning over my desk to look at my screen, it was eye level with them, and it said, "Expect resistance." I look back on that now I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Why did I have that stupid sticker there? But I don't even know where I got the damn sticker, but I put it up there because at the time I'm like, yeah, that's right. As an artist, I'm going to expect resistance to my art as this book designer doing the next Dora the Explorer 8x8, when I moved to Penguin, that sticker was long gone because I again, it's age, it's maturity, it's all those things where you're like, okay, this is a collaborative deal, publishing. I'm not going to expect resistance.
And also, as a manager of designers, like you really learn that, I feel like my whole job as a manager is to try to help others be the best version, the best designer, art director. And, if my answer is consistently no, or, well, I know that this isn't going to work, that doesn't do anybody any good. And my designers consistently make choices that I wouldn't make, but I want them to have the autonomy to make those choices, and very often, most of the time, like they're great choices. And so there's definitely a sense of letting go and allowing things to organically be what they are. Because if we were the ones who were designing every single book on every single list, like one, it would be impossible, and two, they would all look the same, and it would be so boring.
Exactly. I've talked about this on the podcast from time to time. I sort of managed, especially when I was at Penguin and a little bit at Simon & Schuster, but definitely at Penguin, I sort of managed. I'm a big baseball fan, and you hear managers talk about their job is to put the players in the best position possible to succeed. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the base definition of what a baseball manager is supposed to do, and that's how I picked that up, and that's how I approached it myself. Is I'm going to put these designers in the best possible position to succeed.
Yeah.
Their choices aren't necessarily going to be the choices I would have made for whatever any given book project. In fact, one of my designers who I believe overlapped, like you and I both worked with her, was Sarah Corbett.
Oh yes, love Sarah Corbett.
Oh yeah, she was the associate art director. I hired her out of Abrams.
Abrams, yeah. Mm-hmm.
She was such a totally different designer than me. I was more of a traditionalist, and so she would make choices on designs that I never would have made.
Mm-hmm.
Some choices I didn't particularly like, but I knew was right for the book, and so it was like, yeah, great, love it.
Yep.
Done.
She would bring. I mean, she's an illustrator as well, and just brought such a different level of creativity to projects. Yeah. And I feel like every time, because she and I worked together at Abrams, I would walk into her office and be like, wow, like her style of creativity was so different than mine, but I was always in awe of whatever it was that she was making, because it was going to be amazing.
Everything she did felt like a surprise. Like
mm-hmm.
I stopped anticipating what I was going to get from her for a book design, for a cover design. Because it was never what I imagined.
Don't you think that's one of the nicest things that could be said about a designer? Yeah.
Yep. It was great. And I loved managing designers because every single one of them had their own personalities, their own aesthetics, their own vision, and they were really good at, and this is something that an art director has to be good at. And that's the other thing too, is what I was trying to do is essentially, create a swarm of art directors. I wanted all of them to
mm-hmm.
become art directors.
Yeah.
And many of them went on and did just that. One thing that I'm really proud of is the design team at Penguin. We were pretty good at, I thought, at understanding what the editorial team wanted. As an art director, you have to kind of like hear what people are saying, anticipate what people are going to say, mm-hmm. and then mix that into your own personal ideas, visions, aesthetics, and have all of that aligned perfectly with the tone of the book, with what the book needed, the writing needed, the illustration needed. And that gumbo, that mixture, when done right, was kind of magical. Not to be too cheesy about it, but it just was a really great reason to come into work every single day, because you just didn't know what to expect, and people were really good at like getting all of that together and coming up with this book design that checked all the boxes, commercially, artistically, and otherwise.
Yeah, I think that designers, our role is not just putting the pieces together. We're a little bit of interpreters, we're a little bit mind readers, we're a little bit therapists. Just because what's said in a cover meeting is not always what's literally intended. And especially when you're getting that feedback from author, agent, sales, editor, from all fronts. It's really just sort of putting it all into the container and like shaking it up and going, okay, well, what's rising to the top here? Like, what's the thing that's really being said, even though it's not explicit in this feedback? And it's a special skill, but I also think it makes us better humans, because we're able to navigate the world and go, okay, I can problem solve this. Like, it's problem solving and asking questions and digging to the deeper meaning of what this feedback actually is, rather than just going, make it bigger? Okay, we'll make it bigger, because that's not really what they ever want.
Right. They just want it to be better. They don't know how to say that.
Yes.
And they don't want to say it, because then they'll feel like
they're telling us what to do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but sometimes I want to be told what to do, because, if you get the runaround and like you've done 18 versions of something and you're just not mind reading the thing that somebody wants you to, then, just tell me what you want.
Yeah. One time I was talking to the publisher, my boss, and we were talking about a cover design. He wasn't happy with it. And it went kind of back and forth through the routing process a couple of times, and it still wasn't there. And his notes were like, can we rethink this? Can we rethink this? Mm-hmm. So I went into his office, because it's always better to talk to somebody face to face than just go back and forth with emails.
100%.
So I sat, we were talking about it, sat down at his desk, and I'm like, so what is it that you want out of this cover? And he's like, I don't know. I just don't want this.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'll work on it.
Yeah,
it's
like throwing darts blindfolded.
It's easier to know what you don't want. Much harder to find what it is that you do, or explain what it is that you do.
Yeah, I mean, I've really taken a tact with my team, and it was something that I started developing at PRH, just because it was so very heavily sales and marketing driven there. Trying to really establish what the goal of the cover was. This is for mostly for fiction. Before we even presented any options and began any kind of development, because if our goals as the design team and the editorial team were not aligned with the sales goals, then we were wasting everybody's time. And not that I feel like everything has to be so sales and marketing driven, but ultimately when these projects go out into the world, they're going to have metadata, they're going to have descriptors, they're going to have things that teachers and librarians and parents and kids are going to look at in order to go, this is a book about this, this, and this. And to try to put the designers in a position where they're beginning from this place of knowing, okay, I know what this book is, let's make the visual for it. It's proven to be a little bit easier. There are definitely moments where it's not, but creating that alignment from the beginning and like the real collaboration, because we can't create in a vacuum.
Yeah. You started at Penguin in June of 2016, so we did overlap, and I have a memory of emailing you and saying welcome, but now I'm not entirely sure that happened.
Oh my gosh, that you may have. That time period, I was just an absolute whirlwind for me. It was sort of being catapulted into a different universe. PRH I was at Abrams for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was very, very different, and the level of responsibility was much greater. And I think I was a little deer in headlights for a little bit.
Was that with Martha? Was Martha your manager?
Yes, a tremendous mentor.
Rego?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, she's the best.
Yeah.
So there are illustrators listening. Obviously, I think a lot of people listening want to know, okay, here's Maria. I'd like to send Maria my work. There are some illustrators who either think or have been told that publishers are turned off by traditionally created work. Mm. Does that apply to you, Maria?
No, not at all.
Or your team?
No.
Of course it doesn't.
No. I feel like that's silly.
I agree. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what it's about. Is it that they think it's too slow? I don't get it. I honestly don't know why people think publishers don't like traditionally created work. Maybe some people in publishing have said that. For them, digital works better for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. But do you care? It sounds like you don't.
No, I mean, I work for Candlewick. I mean, Candlewick continues to publish illustrators who create traditionally as well as digitally, and the standard is just as high for both, and the acceptance is the same for both. If I could guess where that comes from, it's from a place of wanting to make books quickly, and maybe without the ability to revise, or I don't know, but I think the other thing that happens often, because the industry can be a little bit of an enigma to people who are trying to break in, is that folks at a conference or on social media hear one person or two people say, well, publishers don't like this, and then somehow that becomes the gospel of what publishers do and don't like, and that's not true. And I think people, especially on social media, like I won't even go down that road, but particularly people who go to these conferences, which I have participated in many, and it's always a learning experience for me, and I always come away feeling like I've learned more about my craft than I knew before I got there. But I think that people need to go and just absorb all of the information rather than thinking that there is a right and a wrong way to do things, because there's so much subjectivity in our industry and everything that we do that there could never be a right or wrong way.
Exactly. I say that to illustrators all the time. Publishing is built on 100% subjectivity.
Yes.
And hunches and guesswork and fingers crossing, wood knocking. I mean, there's so much of that. It's a gamble. Publishing is not a monolith. There are imprints within publishing houses that have completely different ideas of what a book should look like. Even within the same imprint, different editors have differing opinions on text. Art directors and designers have differing opinions. Like, me and Sarah were completely opposite. We had different ideas on which illustrator we would want to use on a particular project. Completely different ideas. It's just two people in the same group. So to think that all of publishing does X or thinks Y is just nothing good comes from that line of thinking. No.
And I do think, kind of coming back to your original question about, illustrators reaching out to certain art directors, if you are going to reach out to a certain art director, I think it is helpful to know the kinds of books that they publish and the sorts of things that they like. Not that you couldn't break the mold by sending something that's totally different, but, you wouldn't want to send me things that are geared for adult books or for cookbooks or things like that. Like, it needs to be specific to the kinds of books that I'm working on, and I feel like most illustrators do take the time to do a little bit of homework and see the kind of work that the art directors and editors are doing before they reach out, and if they don't, then I encourage them to do that.
Yeah, I do too, to an extent, because it's very time consuming. Like, if you want to send your work to an art director and you do some research and you're not totally sure if they're gonna like your work, send it anyway. Because you never know. Like you said, like you might break the mold. They might just at that point, that week, that month, like have had meetings that like, hey, maybe we need to work more. Let's expand our scope of illustration. If we've only been doing this kind of work. For example, I remember at Penguin, like YA covers, middle grade covers, there was a point where 65% of them were photography. And so if you saw that, you'd say, well, they're using a lot of photography for their cover, so maybe I shouldn't send my work to them. No, you should, because it switched really quickly. It went from photography and then, oh gosh, what's the John Green book?
Fault in Our Stars.
Thank you. It feels like that book came out, and then after that, everything became illustration.
Yeah.
So it changes.
No, I totally agree that there's no harm in reaching out and putting your work in front of people, because the majority of what we do is kind of by chance, like, in terms of who I'm hiring and how your work lands in front of me at the right time.
Right.
A lot of the folks that we hire for, we're looking for something specific, and then suddenly that person arrives in our inbox or is sent to us by an agent, or we get the postcard, and they become the person that works on the project because the timing just aligned.
This podcast is produced by the Illustration Department, a global leader in online education for illustrators. Visit illustrationdept.com for offerings like mentorships and portfolio reviews, testimonials, our alumni showcase, our best-selling Substack, and more. That's illustrationdept.com. And now, back to our conversation. An illustrator I'm currently mentoring said to me yesterday that an illustrator has to have a, quote, recognizable style. I hear what that means. I get it to an extent, but I think a lot of illustrators get into trouble because they then interpret it like, well, I have to work in only this one way. Yeah. Even though I'm into working in several different ways. I'm told I need a recognizable style, so does that mean I have to give up working in quote-unquote styles B and C and focus just on A, even though A, B, and C are all completely viable ways to work? I told her, don't worry about finding a recognizable style. Focus on your vision, make good decisions with the work that you're doing, and be consistent about it, and build a body of work that shows that consistency and your good decision making.
Yes.
And your artistry. That becomes a recognizable style, but I don't think you need a recognizable style. Who gives a shit if anyone recognizes your work? I didn't say who gives a shit to her, but that's what I'm saying to you. I feel like I can cuss in front of you, Maria.
Absolutely.
So you know what I'm saying? Like I think it's a way, way overrated thing to say you need a recognizable style. There's a ton of ego in that, and I just don't think that's a proper way of approaching portfolio building.
I agree. And I think that the illustrators are told very often that they need to only have one style. I also think that it's limiting, but it's also silly because does anybody really work in one style? I mean, there's nuance and there's variance in the way that we create. And also, like, if you're doing this for a long time, like, how could you possibly stay static for your entire career? Things are going to evolve. I think that there's an inherent level of competition in that sort of, only have one style, because I think that it makes people so conscious of the thing that they're doing rather than just being free to create.
Right. And
the word that you said, consistency, that's the key. It's not about only having one way of drawing a hand that you have in every single project, but it's about how are you consistent in your brushstrokes, or how are you consistent in the way that you're composing scenes. And it's not consistent as in the same, it's consistent as in the quality is high. And It's what I like to call the page turn moment. Like, if I see a singular image and I feel like there's something really there, like that to me means that I want to turn the page, I want to see what comes next. And especially when we talk about narrative art and making images that have some consistency from beginning to end, like that's the most important piece.
I could not agree more.
I would love to discourage illustrators from feeling like they have to constantly be looking at everybody else's work in order to know what good work is.
Exactly.
I love going to the bookstore. I love seeing what's out. Obviously I look at art all the time and I love seeing folks send their work, but I think if you surround yourself with other people's styles, then there's nothing left for you but to emulate that. Mm-hmm. It's just like being in art school and them saying, don't start working from the computer. I mean, for God's sake, please do not start an idea with the computer. Like, your best ideas come from your hand. They come from your brain connecting to a pencil, to connecting to a piece of paper. You can't try to steal other people's ideas in order to find your own. Sure, there's going to be influences, but I think that people need to actually believe in their own ability to create and not worry so much about, what so-and-so over there is doing.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of computers and the ability to create, what's happening on the AI front for you and your team?
Candlewick has taken a strong stance, as I know a lot of publishers have, where we now include a line on our copyright page that essentially says you're not allowed to use any content in this book for AI purposes, which is good. It's a beginning. I don't think that that's going to stop what's already in motion.
No.
But I do think that my team, at least, no one is using AI in terms of illustration or art or making content. I'm not aware of having received any art that has been made in that way. I think the majority of the industry feels pretty concerned and protective of their work, which I'm not sure where we're going to end up with that, in the way that we share work, because so many things are posted online, which is where they're being stolen from. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the elephant in the room that everybody is highly aware of, just sort of treading lightly on each project, and yeah.
I'm happy to hear that, obviously. And yes, publishing seems to me that they're pretty much everyone's in lockstep and pushing back on it and all. And the thing I'm sort of still scratching my head about over the past couple of years, and this isn't to say that I'm fully tapped into what everyone is saying and doing and all the petitions that are going around and all that stuff, but it does seem weirdly quiet. Well, to me anyway, just to me, on the social media front from agents about AI. I could be completely missing every single thing and just kind of, I don't know, drumming up fear where there isn't any. But fear is not the right word. It seems like, I mean, there are a handful of folks in the publishing industry, agents specifically, who at the drop of a hat will band together on social media and put petitions together, calling out something that, they feel is untoward or another. And yet I haven't seen any of that over the past couple of years from these same folks. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone who's listening to this can email me and be like, no, dude, check this out. Here's all this stuff going on. Yeah,
I know I've seen, some individual agencies and groups putting things out. I know several illustrators who have decided to stop posting, in general. But we're fighting so many different things, on so many fronts, and not just AI, but book banning and, the whole political situation. I would imagine that people feel maybe a little overwhelmed and maybe not entirely sure where to start or how to go about doing this on a social platform, which, obviously this is where all of this is kind of playing out. But I'm sure that there are certain protections that are going into place, clauses that are in contracts that, are intended to protect our illustrators and their work. Not being an agent, I'm not privy to all of the goings on, but that would be my guess.
Yeah, I know. I'm hesitating even. Maybe I'll leave this in, maybe I'll take it out. I'm hesitating to even share this just because I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to alarm anyone and be like, wait a minute, how come agents aren't doing this? Like, I'm not saying they aren't. All I'm saying is I used to see very easily without any effort all of these other things that they would do. But I haven't, and I've looked and I haven't found anything. But that doesn't mean anything. Speaking of posting online.
Oh, okay.
Again, illustrators are listening. You're an art director. They're an illustrator. Let's make the connection. Let's build the bridge here. How are you finding illustrators? You mentioned postcards, emails. Like, what's going on? What's the list?
Yeah, it's sort of all of the above. I still get postcards. I still really enjoy getting them. You don't have to send a physical postcard because I know they cost money to make and to mail. I get emails from illustrators, both to my Candlewick account as well as to my personal account. Agent emails. I'm friends with a lot of agents. We'll see folks as they're bringing them in, all channels. But then also like going down the rabbit hole of clicking on this person, clicking on another person, finding this blog, clicking on that. Getting the whatever newsletter and there's an illustration and Googling somebody's name and, finding a person that I hadn't been aware of before.
What are you looking for? Well, gosh, I know that's a big question. When people used to ask me that when I was doing conferences and things, it was like, gosh, what am I not looking for? But what is it that when you're looking at somebody, you're looking on their whatever platform or on their website or wherever, and you go, ooh, what's this? Mm-hmm. What draws you in?
Regardless of style or genre, it's the ability to tell a story in an image, mm-hmm. which can be done in a million different ways.
Right.
In terms of genre and style, I mostly work on fiction. I will do the occasional picture book and younger project, but it's mostly like illustrated, middle grade through YA. So I'm usually looking at folks who have the ability to do color as well as black and white, for the potential to illustrate interiors. But I'm always looking, and if someone sends me something that I know I can't use for any of my projects, I always forward it along to the art directors who are working on those kinds of books.
Yeah. Beyond the opposite of what you just said, what else causes you to go, okay, this isn't right, I need to keep going?
Well, specificity for kids' books. Like if the content is just something that I'm like, that I can't quite picture that. And granted, it's broad, because if I'm thinking of everything from picture books all the way through YA, sometimes like you said, the consistency isn't there. I don't fully trust that this person is like quite there yet. I do try to save the majority of the Illustrator emails that I get. I have a folder that I put them in, and I'll go back through, every so often and just look and see like, oh, right, yeah, this person. And then I'll click on their work just to see what do they have that's new. Like, has this style evolved to a place where, like maybe. I think a lot of folks get really eager and they try to send too many images all in one email. And my suggestion would be send 2, maybe 3 that are excellent representations of your work. That way, it's not a huge email, and it's also not, scrolling through a million images, because like that also feels like someone's not quite sure what they're good at yet either.
Right.
And they need to do a little bit of editing before they send stuff out.
Yeah. You tell me if I'm steering illustrators in the wrong direction. What I recommend is for an illustrator to create like an 11 by 17 sheet using whatever program that they prefer. On the sheet, have their name, their website, and their email address somewhere. Mm-hmm. Nicely designed, or mimicking what they have on their website. And on the rest of the real estate, there's you can add in, puzzle in 3, 4, maybe 5 pieces. So it's one attachment. You can save it as a PDF or a JPEG. Either way, it's a fairly small attachment.
Yeah.
Plus, it's got your information on it. So if you, Maria, or someone decides to print it out or email it or forward it to a coworker, they don't have to do much. Oh, here's so-and-so's work. You can check out their website. There it is.
Yeah.
And if you make it a PDF, the website can be hyperlinked. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things you could do with that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And you hit on the key components, making sure that their contact info is there. If the link is embedded in the email or it's in the image, all of that is good. The other thing that sometimes illustrators will do, and I think that this is like an iPad thing, the images will get embedded into the actual body of the email, and very often they're massive in their scale, and I can only see one little corner of it. And I'm not going to click and open and go through all of the steps. So rather than doing that, making sure that it's actually an attachment, that way it can just be easily viewed. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know it's a lot of steps. There's a lot of pressure for people to make amazing art and then make it presentable to all of these different people in the industry. And something else I think illustrators should know is that most art directors are pretty nice people. And we're moving very quickly because we have a million things, but most often we are going to take the time to open an email and read it and save it and reach out if we're excited about it. So, hopefully they can know that their work is going to someone who's, not just throwing it in the trash, that they are being considered.
Exactly. So for folks listening, what I'm going to do is put your email address, your Candlewick email address, in the show notes.
Great. That sounds perfect.
And people can email you and say, I listened to this amazing podcast that you were on. I mean, the podcast was amazing. You're amazing, but the podcast was like truly amazing. No, I'm kidding. And they can just email you and say, hey, Maria, listen to your episode. Here's my work.
Yes. And with one request, and this is something that I actually learned from one of these conferences from, I think, an agent there who said, please don't email me for at least a month, because you should take whatever feedback, whatever, and apply it to your work, then reach out rather than emailing right away.
Interesting. So they should listen to this episode, wait a month, then email you.
Yeah, let it percolate for a minute. And they don't, maybe you don't have to change anything, but just sort of let it sit.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let it percolate. Do a little percolating.
Yeah, and I think that's just a good rule of thumb in general, within our industry and the way that we work and how quickly we're moving. Sometimes we don't read things as thoroughly or complete something as thoroughly before we hit send or share, and I think it's always just a good thing to give a bit of a pause before pressing send. Sit on that email for a second before you decide to send it to whoever, and maybe you want to rewrite something or, change the tone or not send it at all. I think that it's okay for us to slow down and be a little bit human.
I mentioned this on the podcast once or twice before. When I was a much younger designer, I was a little bit of a hothead, and I took offense to literally everything. So my boss, Hani Yammer, who I don't know if you guys ever crossed paths, she was amazing. She said to me, write the email. Either don't just write it and then don't send it, write it and delete it, or write it and then email it to yourself.
Yes.
And read it and see if you still need to send it to an editor or a copy editor or whoever you're, having an issue with. And gosh, she saved me a lot of grief.
Oh my gosh. Well, and 'cause sometimes, we're not siloed. If you're upset about something, that means that someone else might kind of know. And if you pause, very often someone might actually come around and be like, hey, actually, let's chat about that thing that just happened. And there can be a better resolution reached rather than, sending an off-the-cuff email that might not actually articulate all of the things that you want to. So
yeah, I did that once later in my career. That every now and then I think about it and I just cringe because something happened that someone did that I thought was unprofessional and just was kind of mucked up the system and it just was causing a lot more work for other members of the team that this particular person was doing. Instead of going into their office and saying, hey, this thing you're doing is kind of getting in the way of the process. We need to talk about how to speed things up, and do you need to delegate or move some work off your desk because there's a log jam happening in your office. I just sent an email to that person's boss.
Ooh.
And was like, this person is causing a log jam, this and that. And I don't know what I expected to happen. I guess I thought that the boss would just talk to that person and then things would get better and that was it. But I mean, within minutes, the person came into my office and closed the door and was like, what the hell, dude? What? Why'd you email my boss about this? Why didn't you just come to me? And so we got into a little bit of a thing. It ended up fine, but lesson learned.
Yeah. Yeah, and so long as it's the lesson learned, and I think most of us, I certainly have had those moments, and it's like, oh yeah, this isn't the best way to be, is it? And it also doesn't make you feel very good.
No, it doesn't.
So
it does not.
Yeah.
Yeah, no drama. No drama. Yeah, oh gosh, regrets. Let's not even start there. Then we'll have another 52-minute episode on regrets and what. It's the heaviest thing to carry, and I'm currently working on letting go of regrets, trying to let go of regrets. Yeah, I know it's hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to let go of regrets and just learning from them and saying, okay, it happened. I can't change the past. I can just use that as a lesson and move forward as a better person or make better decisions. That's something that I'm currently working on right now with myself.
Amazing. Yeah, and not to get too, woo-woo or metaphysical, but, all of this ties into being a creative person, which,
Sure.
ties into being a human. And we also have lives that are outside of, like, sitting at a desk or, answering emails. And there's so much more that matters in the grand scheme, like how we conduct ourselves in all of these scenarios, and then what we value and how we treat each other. I'm not sure when this will air, but publishing did have just sort of a bigger tragedy in the last week where we lost Katie Cunningham, who was an associate publisher at Candlewick and someone that I worked with for several years. And she was exactly my age. Sort of seeing this incredible life lived and cut so very short, it really just puts everything into perspective. Like, well, why are we here? And if it's not for each other, and if it's not to try to make the world better through the books that we make and the way that we care for each other, then we should just, close up. Like, that's not the way to be.
Right. There's the preciousness.
Yeah.
That's what's precious.
Yes.
Not, I picked, Clarendon for my typeface and you don't want Clarendon, you want, I don't know, Sabin or whatever, and we shall have a fight about it. Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Is there anything you'd like to share with listeners, remembering that most of them, if not all of them, are illustrators, to close this convo out from you to them?
Gosh. Make work that makes you happy. Like that. I feel like we try to contort ourselves to make work that looks like something that has already sold or something someone has told us to make, but ultimately we have to make work that we like, and if that's not something that gets you paid, we'll make it anyway because it's just making you a better creator.
To learn more about Maria, visit mariamiddleton.com. Maria's email address at Candlewick can be found in the show notes. If you find value in this podcast, you can support it by subscribing to my best-selling Substack. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you will access hundreds of articles on the art, practice, and history of illustration, unlock bonus podcast episodes called Extra Credit, and connect with other members of the ID community. Join me on Substack by visiting illustrationdept.substack.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.